Open this door right now, or we will break it down." The officer's shout tore through the quiet of midnight. Two patrol cars idled on the front lawn, their red and blue lights washing over the old man's rose bushes. Behind them, the HOA president barked sharply, "Just tear the fence down already." She believed she had him trapped over a wooden gate. Arthur Vance didn't plead. He didn't raise his voice. He simply glanced at his watch. Most people panic when police arrive. Arthur knew better. He understood that one step across his threshold would end careers permanently. Welcome back to Echo Stories. Stay with us, because what happens when that door opens will permanently change his neighborhood. The digital clock on the lead cruiser flickered to 2100 hours as the tires rolled onto the grass. Emergency lights pulsed through Arthur's darkened living room. He stood behind lace curtains, unmoving, his silhouette as rigid as the oak trees surrounding his land. Outside, the low hum of engines filled the air. Linda stood between the cruisers, her clipboard pressed tightly to her chest, eyes locked on the wooden fence. Earlier that afternoon, she had spent 3 hours on the phone with a contact at the county environmental office, securing a verbal confirmation she intended to use as leverage if the police hesitated. She didn't just want the fence removed. She wanted the man behind it to submit to her authority. The rookie officer, his uniform still crisp from the academy, didn't wait for instructions. He marched up the porch and slammed his fist against the oak door with unnecessary force. In his other hand, he held up a smartphone, angled so its camera captured everything. The officer froze mid-motion. On the screen wasn't an elderly homeowner. It was a live video feed. A silver-haired man with a hardened expression of decades on the bench stared back coldly. 30 years of legal rulings etched into his face. Sergeant Miller took one look and felt his stomach drop. The unmistakable face of the county's Chief Justice filled the screen. Sergeant Miller. The voice echoed across the porch, calm but amplified by the silence of the street. The judge didn't wait for introductions. "I was under the impression your department required a signed warrant for my chambers before conducting an aggressive property seizure after dark." Miller's face drained of color. He instantly understood the disaster he had walked into by trusting the HOA president's assurances. The man on that screen could erase his pension with a single phone call. The rookie stepped back instinctively, his hand falling away from his belt. Miller shook his head, already calculating the disciplinary fallout. Linda, however, remained oblivious. She stormed toward the porch, heels clicking against stone, attempting to push past the officers. To her, the man on the phone was just another obstacle. "Miller, what are you doing?" she shrieked. "The bylaws are clear. I have an emergency order for this drainage obstruction." She pointed directly at Arthur's phone. "I don't care who you're talking to, Arthur. This is an HOA matter, not a courtroom drama." The judge remained silent. That silence was far more frightening than any raised voice. Finally, Sergeant Miller grabbed the rookie by the shoulder. "We're leaving," he muttered, eyes down. The officers retreated quickly, reversing their cruisers so fast gravel sprayed into the street. Within seconds, the sirens disappeared. Linda stood alone, gripping her clipboard until the plastic bent. "You think that judge protects you?" she hissed. "He can guard your door, but not county code. Inspectors don't need his permission." She spun around, climbed into her car, and roared away. Arthur stood quietly on his porch, the phone still glowing in his hand. The judge offered a single nod before disconnecting. Arthur stared at the fence. Something wasn't right. Morning arrived with deceptive calm. By 8:30, the sound of a diesel engine rolled down the street. Arthur carried a tray of Earl Grey to the porch and sat just as Linda marched up the driveway again, this time flanked by two workers in orange vests and a man in a tailored suit. She raised a neon yellow document and began reading loudly, ensuring every neighbor could hear. Arthur poured tea slowly. "Lil," he said to his grandson, "bring chairs for the neighbors. If this becomes a performance, the audience should be comfortable." The neighbors gathered. Linda shoved the paper forward. "This is a county emergency abatement order." Arthur studied it without touching it. Then he smiled, a small, knowing smile. "It's fascinating," Arthur said calmly, "how the county misspelled its own director's name." He pointed out the error. Then another. No embossed seal. Only a digital copy. He handed it back gently. This is junk. The crowd murmured. Linda snapped. I don't care. Tear it down. Chains were unrolled. The winch screamed. Arthur sat back down. Patience, he whispered to Leo. The fence held. Marcus stepped forward, desperation in his eyes. He offered money. A penthouse. A deal. Arthur declined. You're chasing a shortcut, Arthur said. But this land doesn't forgive shortcuts. Marcus ordered the fence destroyed. An excavator moved forward. Arthur returned with a metal detector. The machine screamed. He dug. 1 meter down. The spade struck metal. A brass disc embedded in reinforced concrete. A federal survey marker. Sergeant Miller stared into the hole. Frozen. Federal point, he whispered. The machine shut down instantly. Linda screamed. Arthur spoke calmly. Federal law. 5 years in prison. Marcus panicked. He pulled up digital maps. Arthur unrolled vellum blueprints. Signed. Dated. His own. You altered the city database, Arthur said quietly. The crowd gasped. Sirens returned, this time federal. Marcus was arrested. Linda was stripped of authority. The neighborhood exhaled. 30 days later, the fence stood rebuilt. Neighbors painted together. Leo asked quietly, was it the ground that stopped them? Arthur smiled. The ground doesn't choose sides, he said. It only obeys laws. The fence gleamed white. Some boundaries hold because they must, and some truths cannot be moved. Justice, after all, is rarely loud, but always lasts.